Hi, beautiful souls. This is Dee Lee here with another Galactic Origins reading for a client with initials AE. You may notice on the cover of this video is a digital mandala image that I created. It is a channeled artistic creation based on the findings of her reading. It's meant to activate a connection to her galactic past lives, connect her with her galactic guides, activate any healing or karmic healing needed based on her galactic history and her Earth past life history. And it's also meant to activate her soul mission. And this can be used during meditation. You can just kind of gaze or stare at the image and see what comes up. It's really cool to send this to a client before the reading to see if they can pick up on anything that might come afterwards. If you want to find out more about um, contacting me for your own digital mandala, you can check out my website, dlkevolve.com, and you can also check out some other ones that I've done in the past under the Art by Dee Lee section. So also in this reading, I focused on some shamanic healing around two issues that I saw that were kind of a recurring patterns for her. So we are born into many societal agreements that come to us just from being on Earth. Like women must sacrifice themselves for others. It's kind of down from your parents and your grandparents and your great grandparents. So some of these can also be ancestral agreements that are personal to the bloodline, issues that happen in your family line. They can be a mixture of societal and ancestral. They can also be personal agreements based on your current life circumstances. Like you have a fear of public speaking because when you were in second grade, you got up to speak and everybody laughed at you because, you had toilet paper stuck to your foot. So you form the agreement, I'm never going to speak in public again. So these agreements are formed in this life. They come from the bloodline and they come from past lives. They come from society. And talk therapy serves its purpose. It's great. It's helpful. But when you really want to get to the root of an issue, you also need to heal it energetically as well. So in shamanism, when you command the second attention, you release these old agreements and you replace them with new agreements energetically. And this helps to stop the behavior from occurring in the future, which a lot of times when these agreements are in place, it is such an automatic reaction in the way that we behave that it's really, really hard to just stop the behavior. So for instance, if you're someone who loses your temper, but you're really working hard on not doing that, and every single time you try to prevent yourself from losing your temper with your children, there you go. You do it again and again and again. So when you get to the root of the issue energetically, it helps to eliminate some unwanted behaviors or patterns that you're seeing in your life. So again, for this reading, I started with a shamanic journey. And the first thing I saw when I went back to her past life, I saw her in this very lush green jungle. She was a creature with this bluish cat-like skin and with stripes, kind of like in the movie Avatar. She just was someone who lived off the land in the jungle. She was a bipedal being, so she was an animal, but she was walking up on 2 feet. She was living very peacefully and connected to the Earth or the planet that she was on. Then I saw her in a lifetime connected with Mars, where I saw a war, a spiritual war, a religious war, it seems like, and she was actively fighting in it. And I also saw her with a soulmate connection. She was with this person in all of her lives, but this person was tragically ripped from her in a past life. And she is now here meant to grow away from having to have that person with her while embodying a human body and learning to love herself first before she can find another deep connection to someone else again. And the nodes will speak more about this story when we get to that part. So when I tapped into what she came to heal when she came to this Earth lifetime, she was really working on past lives from Earth and past lives on other planets. So that was one of her main karmic healings still needed when she decided to come here. And when I saw how these agreements that I sent her healing around really were affecting her when I did a chakra scan. So I tapped into the energy of her chakras and everything seemed fine except for her sacral and her solar plexus, which were both underactive. And I was getting that her sacral was underactive due to a lack of connection to another, And this could have stemmed from that lifetime where she lost her soulmate and she feels like she's alone. But also her Chiron placement shows this because it's in the seventh house. So we do know there's wounding around relationships and connecting with others. And her solar plexus was also underactive, showing a lack of self-confidence in her own abilities. And she's a Virgo sun. Virgo is in the 29th degree. So we know that's a challenging placement when you're finishing up working on the energy of this Virgo sun placement. They could be dealing with this self-critical nature of always second guessing herself and lacking self-confidence because she's so aware of what still needs to be healed within her or what she's not bringing to the table. This also connects to her Chiron placement because Chiron is in Aries, and that is a wound around lack of self-love or self-confidence. So when I tapped into the level of density in her past lives that she experienced, she had the whole gamut from 3D all the way up till the 12th dimension, if that's the highest dimensional range that you're using. And she was mainly service to others in her past lives, pretty much all service to others. Um, I also am seeing that she had many lives on Earth, and she was here pre-humanity on Earth, pre-Lemuria, Lemuria, and Atlantis. So she has had many lives here on Earth in the higher etheric states, but also in 3D. There was something really significant about Mesopotamia and the early visitations from the ETs during that Earth culture, and her Aldebaran placement connects her to a possible bloodline connection to Mesopotamian royalty. So she could be a long descendant of someone who was in Mesopotamia as a ruler. And as we know, with some of the early um, time periods on Earth, a lot of these Earth humans were intermingling with extraterrestrials who were visiting at the time. So also, not only did she have many lifetimes on Earth in the higher etheric states and 3D states, she also had many lifetimes in 3D and the higher etheric states outside of Earth, out in the galaxy as well. I did sense a DNA connection for her through her third house of siblings. And this was connected via Neptune and the Hyades. And I'm getting that perhaps her sister was in a past life with her in the Hyades. So before we begin to get into the deep parts of the galactic soul origin reading, just a general overview. I got that she came from within our universe, but her origins were from outside of our galaxy. And she was actually originating from the Southern Pinwheel Galaxy. And she carried both an individual and a group frequency over these lifetimes. She is also, I also kind of envisioned her where she was heading after this. I saw her at some point in the shamanic journey living on Earth, but it was really peaceful and everything was healed. And we were a highly evolved society, and people were openly talking about their starseed origin, and everybody was like super connected galactically. And I saw her there. And I'm not sure if it is actually Earth or another place like Earth, because I also picked up on the fact that the Southern Pinwheel Galaxy, when I dug into the actual astronomy, I forget the website, but I link it below, of the Pinwheel Galaxy, I was connecting to um, many new stars are coming to be born in that galaxy, and I would sense that further down the line there will be many planets evolving as we are now there, and she perhaps might be going back there to experience this experience again there. And I could sense her doing the same thing she's doing on Earth now, but in the Southern Pinwheel Galaxy. I also sense the galactic envoy for her, or connection to the Galactic Federation of Worlds. So an overall part of her soul mission, or which I picked up on throughout the reading, just to overview it now, the evolution of consciousness on Earth to bring unity to beings on Earth, bring a sense of importance to animal and plant healing, and seeing animals and plants as our equals, not lesser than us. She's here to support the healing of others and find unity within herself, support life, nature and wildlife, and develop technology that supports evolution in harmony with nature. And she's here to be an anchor to support high vibe frequencies for others. So when I look at A's Pluto placement, she has Pluto in the 12th house Libra, opposite Reticulum, trine Hyades, trine Aldebaran, sextile Antares, sextile the Great Attractor. And then when I look at her Neptune placement in the third house Sagittarius, she's conjunct Antares, conjunct the Great Attractor, and opposite Hyades, and opposite Aldebaran. So I can conclude that number one, she has a lot of these intergalactic portal placements like Antares, the Great Attractor, and Aldebaran. So this means her timeline isn't really linear. It's more everything's happening at once. It might not read so much like Pluto, then Neptune, then Uranus. It's kind of happening not so linearly speaking. But I'm also getting that she's coming from another galaxy, which I tapped into as being the Southern Pinwheel Galaxy. And some of these lifetimes that I'm tapping into again could be happening all at once. So with the sextiles and trines to the same placements that I see the conjunctions and oppositions up in Neptune, sextile trines and Pluto, conjunctions and oppositions to Neptune, it tells me that she probably came into these places sooner than the conjunctions show via Neptune. So it appears that she had simultaneous starts. She could have been in all of these places in addition to many other places at once. And I was tapping into her actually being a rock, a plant, part of the animal kingdom, and the elemental worlds in these places. So she's coming from the Pinwheel Galaxy, M30, M83. It's one of the brightest spiral galaxies in the night sky, and it can be observed easily using binoculars in May. New stars are forming here. So I already mentioned stars forming here, and I sense that there will be new developing worlds and planets there as well. It's located 15 million light years away in the constellation of Hydra. And I'm getting some of this information from the NASA website and the Hubble website. And again, I was connecting deeply to her 1D connection to the rock and crystal realms and the animal kingdom in 2D, but a highly evolved animal and rock connection, not where we would see them as being lesser evolved than us, which I don't really think is true. That's just the way it's viewed here on Earth. So with her Pluto placement in the 12th house, opposite Reticulum in the 6th of Aries, I was sensing her starts there as like a basic, what we would think of as basic earth lizard lifetime, not a bipedal walking reptile. I mean, this was like long before humanoids were even walking these planets. So she was here a long, long time ago as a lizard, perhaps other parts of the animal kingdom. She was here to kind of experience the 3D world in this galaxy. So it was almost like she was starting again when we have that 6th house being very physical and that 12th house being very etheric. She's coming into this placement of being connecting here physically where she was very etheric somewhere else. And then we move on to Neptune. Again, it's conjunct the Great Attractor in the 3rd house, which brings this amazing ability for her to communicate creatively and spiritually with others. As long as she's focusing on clear communication, because we know that sometimes Neptune can bring cloudiness. Also, we have Antares conjunct Neptune in the 3rd house again of Sagittarius. And when we see Antares in a chart, it can indicate a lifetime, or Neptune in the chart can indicate a lifetime where you were part of a high council of light, or the highest version of yourself. I was getting that she was a 3D plant here again and was consulted telepathically because here plants were said to help with healing. The beings there were using them, connecting with them, communicating with them telepathically, and she was able to help the human beings around her. I also connected to a 3D animal lifetime here on Antares where it was an aquatic animal, part of a group consciousness. And again, we know Antares is a portal for beings from other galaxies. So she could have come and was coming and going. This was um, also, star seeds from here are known to be activators of higher levels of consciousness. There are light workers here to help with the ascension. They can talk about and think about complex topics. They're strategic thinkers. They see many steps ahead of a goal or a plan, and they're long-term planners. She's also here to protect the Earth and developing worlds because it is said that Antares is taking care of developing places like Earth and helping to transmute negative energies. And we also know that plants help to transmute negative energies as well. So it feels like she had a really important connection to her plant life on Antares to help cleanse energy, just like plants and trees do here on Earth for us. But it was kind of like, it was kind of seen as being a more energetically, like getting rid of toxic negative energies that were coming in from other places. Then we're moving on to her next placement, where we have Neptune opposite Aldebaran in the ninth house, Gemini. Aldebaran is another interstellar portal. We are looking at another 3D galactic, or I'm sorry, 3D aquatic life again for her. She was a keeper, an elemental feel to it, and a keeper of the land in some way, but in animal form, like a 3D animal, somehow responsible for a major energetic job in maintaining the balance of the energetic grids there in Aldebaran. There's a disconnect here on Earth, though, in this life from this energy because this is the opposition, but we also know that here animals are seen as being less than humans when we know that they're not. So she was very spiritually mature as an animal, and she could share her wisdom with others around her. And this kind of served the global network. It was a collective unity around the globe. And this brings you the gift, a channel between higher wisdom and earthly realms in 3D, a way to do things in a more unified way. But it can feel like a challenge to really tap into this. It's a way to be in 3D, but also to be part of a tribe of beings working together for the greater good of your planet. So you're kind of connected through this soul thread, but felt in the physical world. This connection also is what connects her bloodline to the royalty in Mesopotamia. It also connects her to the Anunnaki as being responsible for human DNA modification and who are known as the gods and rulers of Mesopotamia. So whether or not the gods and rulers were actually humans or the Anunnaki or the beings coming to Earth from other planets, she somehow has a DNA connection in her bloodline to this rulership in Mesopotamia. Then she has Hyades in the ninth house of Gemini. This is where I saw her life, like the Avatar scene, the bluish looking bipedal cat-like being. We know that the Hyades beings are descendants of the original Lyrans who fled after the wars. They're similar to the Pleiadians. Also, I saw her there as an elemental, but this time more as a force of nature, kind of like the wind or the rain. A very powerful force that can come in and destroy, but also gives life. I also saw her in a different life as part of the animal kingdom again. So when she's in these places, she has several experiences and several energies happening at once. This is where I connected that cat lifetime, the blue cat. And this is also where I saw her having a lifetime with her current sister. Hyades is a hub where spiritual beings travel. They stop by along the way to other places. Hyadian starseeds are known to be animal activists and humanitarians. They care for nature. They can also experience great waves of sorrow and pain that are meant to help them heal and grow and learn in this life. They rarely travel from their homes in the Hyades, but when they do travel, it's usually on an important mission. And she's here, she's on Earth. So obviously she left and came here, and she's here working probably for some sort of federation. And she's here to embody a collective intelligence when she's here. So or when she was in the Hyades, she was here to embody collective intelligence at the animal or plant level, where again, they're working as a community to preserve and unite part of the energetic grid or the planet where they're living. a lot of this theme comes up for her, where she's this being that is instinctually connected to the web of life through habits and routines. And this connects also energetically to the ley lines or the energetic grid of the planet. Then we're moving on to Uranus. And for her, I think Uranus, first of all, is in the first house, Scorpio. I think for her, Uranus is about bringing in future mindedness and forward thinking. Um, and someone who can foresee coming trends before others. So Uranus is conjunct the Shapley attractor in the first house. And this is where we intend to embody our truest colors and soul essence in the most rewarding way. This is hard sometimes to manifest where we are at this level of consciousness on Earth because so many people are not caught up with this way of thinking or this more evolved state of consciousness. But we're heading there in the future. So this is where also your unconscious habits are influencing everything else in your life. So if you can really tap into this house, and for her, it's the first house in her chart. And if she can really like heal herself, work on her self identity, her self confidence, all those first house topics, even her physical fitness, this is how she can bring integrity to who she is and release any false attachments and free herself. It's kind of this feeling of having nothing to lose, being so liberated and free in who you are that you don't really care anymore. You're going to just be who you are. And that's part of what being this Uranus placement being conjunct the Shapley in the first house has to do for, or is about for her. The Shapley is also another portal that shows that she's connecting back to other places in the galaxy or outside of the galaxy, and she's traveling back and forth a lot. She doesn't just stay here. It's almost like she's taking information back and bringing it with her when she comes back here again. Then we have Uranus opposite Andromeda in the seventh house of Taurus. And when I tapped into her lifetime in Andromeda, she is an animal again, but some kind of animal that I can't really find here on Earth that goes between land and sea. And this represents a time where she felt unity at first, but then stepped into a feeling of disconnect from the beings around her. It feels like the time when humans or humanoid beings started to walk the planet, and they might have lived in harmony at first or throughout different times, but there was a bit of a shift at some point in this experience in Andromeda, whether it was one lifetime or over many. I'm sensing it was over many, where she started to feel lesser than these humanoid beings, kind of like where we have it on Earth now, which I keep bringing up, where plants and animals are not regarded as being highly evolved as humans to a lot of people. So she started to sense this lack of self, where she didn't feel like she was honored the way she should have been or respected or seen as being a highly evolved contribution. Then we move on to Jupiter, and Jupiter here is in opposition. So we're talking about a challenge to finding joy and expansion. Normally Jupiter brings joy and expansion, but we're talking about a challenge here with the opposition. And Jupiter is in the seventh house, Aries, opposite Arcturus in the first house, Libra. So next, she needs a little break from her 3D experiences and feeling like she's less than these other beings in Andromeda or not being treated so fairly at some point. And she is headed to Arcturus, where she can gain a sense of unity again and work in harmony with nature and beings around her and feel more of a collective vibe. So here I'm sensing that she was in the elemental fairy realm, working in the higher etheric states to connect to the energy of the forest. Which is almost symbolic of being lost and needing to find herself again. If we think about the forest, imagine just wandering through the woods. It's getting dark. You don't know your way out, but you're finding your way home again. So it's almost like this experience here in Arcturus is for that very reason, to start finding her way home again. It's kind of a lifetime of rest, to find joy again and just take a break from where she has been. So this placement also speaks to her time on Earth in pre-Lemuria, and Atlantis. In pre-Lemuria, she was actually on Earth as a plant, just like she was all over the galaxy. So she has, again, another placement where she's part of the plant kingdom, and I sensed that it was kind of almost everywhere. She was probably so many more places than is showing up in the chart. During Lemuria, the Lemurian period, she was an Arcturian in the higher etheric states, feeling a sense of peace and unity, where beings were living in harmony with nature. So she was able to come here to Earth and feel that sense of joy and unity that she was used to. Then came the time of Atlantis, where she was on Earth as a plant again, but this time she was there for the fall of Atlantis, and she has this placement showing a square to Lyra. I get that there's a tension between the start of the human race, which we talked about with the Andromeda placement, but we know that that real start of the human race is said to have come from Lyra. But this is now exemplified with the fall of Atlantis. She can really feel this energy as galactic beings come to Atlantis, and you eventually see the fall of Atlantis falling down, and she is experiencing this and experiencing feeling just separated and falling away from unity and peace in heaven. And this is square. The square is showing up again through the fourth and seventh houses, that sense of yourself and who you are and where you come from and your roots and your family and the parts of you that no one else sees versus your relationships with others in the outside world. So it's important for her to connect in some way with plant medicine in this lifetime, to connect back to her inner child, healing her inner child, finding wondrous states of joy again, and some of this karmic healing around this placement with the fall of Atlantis and the Andromeda placement, where she felt like less than. And she could use plant medicine in many different ways. I don't know if we're talking about connecting through like ayahuasca ceremonies or more so just in herbal magic and cooking in that way, but it seems to be something that could really help in her healing. So now we're moving on to midway through the galaxy with her Mars placement. And Mars is conjunct Orion in the ninth house of Gemini. This is where I sense her being a reptiloid being. And again, not a reptile on four legs as we think of on Earth, but more of a bipedal human-like being in Orion. And she was here to experience the masculine energy. So when Atlantis falls, she's a plant living in harmony, and she experiences the masculine energy that way, but in a judgmental or a way of not liking it. And now she's meant to go to Atlantis or to Orion and actually experience it more extremely in a war zone where there's unbalanced left brain society, like we have here on Earth, just running amok with a lot of that over Martian quality of fighting and aggression, and you get the idea. But here she ends up experiencing the victimhood consciousness. So when we talk about the story of Orion, you have the Orion Empire, which was the oppressive kind of ruling government that was trying to tell everybody how to live. Then you had the Black League, or the underground resistance, who was hiding in the shadows, trying to stop the empire. And then you just had the innocent victims that felt like they were helpless. And she kind of fell into that victimhood consciousness, which she does experience, or she had experienced here on Earth in her earlier years before she really got into the heavy spiritual healing. So this is kind of like a continuation of the energy she was feeling on Atlantis. And she's attempting to work out this victimhood consciousness here, but she wasn't completely successful in Orion. So her chart is also a day chart. So Mars is her greater malefic planet, and it's sextile to Jupiter, which is her greater benefic. And this tells me that this experience was challenging, but it was needed for soul growth and to expand her perspective beyond what she was used to. And also in the ninth house, she was traveling far from what she had known. So Mars in the ninth house is the placement of travel. She was a plant, she was an animal, she was an elemental, and now she was operating like in the higher etheric realms, and now here she is as a reptilian being in a war zone. So things felt very different, but it was for her own growth, which we also often know in the sign of Gemini. That is what Gemini is all about, learning through experiences that are very different than your own. So in the sign of Gemini, also, Mars is a placement that is always wandering, learning, questioning. Here in this current life, this shows up. Always wanting to know more about existence and the spiritual topics that the ninth house brings. And she's especially connected to learning through others who are different than her, as we've already said, which as she did with the Orion experience. And there's also a sextile to Chiron. So this tells me that this experience is very instrumental in healing that wound. So she's healing that Aries wound of self somehow through this placement, especially because Chiron in Aries is ruled by Mars. So this is how somehow going to help her connect more to a sense of bravery. Before I did the reading, I spoke with her and she told me that she's had a vision or a dream or a meditation about seeing someone's face blown off. And I do think that this connects back to her lifetime in Orion. It's also where she can find a sense of purpose of war and fighting for injustice. So we always see in the spiritual community, we often talk about war as being negative. And of course, it has so many negative parts to it. And I'm not like a supporter of wars, but you can also see that if you're fighting for a cause or fighting for an injustice, this is kind of where she's learning about the energy of that and fighting for what she believes is right and learning to be, again, an individual in a body, not just part of a collective plant energy or animal kingdom. So she's definitely experiencing learning to set personal boundaries and connect to her individual authority in a different way than she's used to. And I'm also getting that she was there for the Orion Christ. So when the situation in Orion got so bad, some of the Council of Elders decided to send in a Christ figure, kind of like what happens here on Earth, except for when that figure incarnated on Orion, it actually caused, instead of here, wars that created more division, or religion that created more division, it actually helped the planet to ascend. So she was there, but I got that she was there for the Orion Christ in some capacity, but she left actually before the Orion Collective did ascend. And she moves on to Venus. This is where she's meant to embody a more feminine experience. And I'm getting that she was a gray being actually in a highly evolved state. And I think there are gray beings all over the entire galaxy on different planets, not really just from, the places where you would think like Zeta Reticulum and that kind of those places that we've heard about grays. I really think they've kind of spread out everywhere. So Venus is in the 11th. Venus is in Leo, conjunct Hydra in the 11th house. And we know with the 11th house, this is oftentimes an indicator that someone was seen in the public eye, or she was some sort of Leo leader with her Leo placement. And this placement also squares her nodes. So we know that this is somehow important for her healing. And with Venus, we can also get some artistic talents in writing or visual arts. She has this placement sextile Mars, so this experience also is helping her to heal from her Orion experience. Venus is trying to Jupiter, so she's also healing from that Atlantis experience. This is a really healing placement for her. It's also sextile Uranus, so she's also, again, there to heal from the original mistreatment she felt as a plant in Andromeda. It is trying to Chiron. So again, we're dealing with the wound of self. A lot of healing comes from this placement. Hydra Starseeds, a little bit about them. They're connected to the underworld. So they might be natural shamans or have the ability to work with shamanic healing, or that might be a great way to heal their own issues or karma. They might feel like they're being followed by spirits more than others. They have artistic and intellectual talents. So again, that lends itself to writing or being a fine artist. They can be gifted spiritual healers. They have a strong connection to Kundalini energy and balancing the masculine and feminine within. And we can already see how this is tying together, how she's had these really masculine experiences and these more feminine experiences. So we're talking about a lifetime where she's a very artistic and expressive leader. And then that other Orion lifetime where she is in the war zone. So she's really trying to fully feel these experiences before she learns to integrate them. So now we're going to move on to her nodes. She has her South Node in Taurus, and we know the South Node is here to tell us about the qualities that you are meant to move beyond. You've already mastered them. You can take some talents from the South Node, but you should not use these qualities or talents as a crutch. So when we talk about the South Node in Taurus, we're talking about an experience that brings you back to the basics, animal instincts, connecting to plants, working with your hands, keeping it simple, avoiding deep psychological connections, and you're looking for more connections that are stable and consistent, connected to the rhythms of nature. We know she was a plant. We know she was an animal, so this makes sense. We also could have seen her being a shaman or a native person. She could have been a Native American because I was picking that up too as a past life for her on Earth. We also have the South Node in the 8th house. So this is the physical scene of what she was doing. And when we talk about the 8th house, we're talking about grief, tragedy, loss, could have been rape, torture, death, seeing someone else die, a deep bond with another, but more in a codependent way. So we're saying she did not really, with the Taurus placement, get into deep psychological connections with others or herself. She didn't really dig into those parts of herself, but she did have a deep dependency or codependency on others for existence. So it could be that connection to the way the animal world works in sync with itself, or the plant kingdom does the same thing. But it could also speak to past lives on Earth as a human in a relationship with a spouse where you lost some of your independence and life skills because you depended on your spouse to do certain things for you. So planets and stars conjunct the South Node. She has Capulus conjunct the South Node, and Capulus can bring in a male energy. It can be sexual male energy, penetrating, but it can also be a ruthless nature, that Martian nature, an adventurous nature, and it is also related to Mercury of the mind. And so I looked up the meanings of Capulus. I think it was in an Astrology King. But I also pulled a card for the Orion experience. And the card that I pulled was from a deck that has some planetary and astrological sign symbols. And the card that I pulled was Mars and Mercury. So again, two different times related to Mars and Mercury. So this tells me that she's still dealing with that unhealed mental nature and warlike energy of Mars, connected to two placements now, the South Node and the Orion past life. So the planetary ruler of the South Node is Venus in the 11th house, Libra. So we know this brings in the artistic component we found in the Hydra lifetime. That something needed to be healed. She was in the public eye. She was being too seen. Public eye again, 11th house, too seen, famous perhaps, Leo. Something about writing when we're talking about Venus, but perhaps she was getting too much attention. She was born into prominence with the Leo South Node, or maybe she was going overboard with vanity or recognition and feeling too confined by her status. So in the 11th house, there could have been the need to feel like she had to really, really succumb to the collective ideals and beliefs at the time. And there was so much pressure on her to behave a certain way as someone who was seen in the public eye. So she seems like she was a master writer and communicator, but she didn't really get to write about what she wanted to. She kind of was forced into some sort of belief system that she wasn't really totally in agreement with. So planets and stars in aspect to the South Node. She has trines and sextiles sextile to Saturn. Saturn can indicate in a past life that someone was comfortable by their limits, and now it's time to move on. So it's time to expand and really tap into what interests her at a soul level, and that's what she's meant to portray now in this lifetime artistically. Now we're talking about the North Node, and the North Node is the energy that we're moving into. It's easier to attain moving into this energy when we are older, perhaps after our Saturn return, or maybe you start working on it later in your 40s after Pluto squares Pluto. And it's harder to embody this though in your younger years, because in your younger years you fall back on the energy of the South Node. So her North Node in Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign of digging in psychologically to who you are, doing your shadow work, um, accepting and digging into the darker side of life, the deep psychology of others. This is the life where she can really connect to others more deeply. She's meant to transmute anything that's holding her back from the past and become the alchemist, to heal, to become the phoenix rising from the ashes. She's meant to merge with another, but in a way that isn't codependent like she had with the South Node energy. She's meant to get back in touch with her sexuality and integrate all parts of herself. Call the shadow parts home. Accept who she is, accept the light, accept the dark, and be all of it. The North Node is in the second house. She's also meant to feel safe and secure again. She's meant to be in touch with her own values and what is important to her and express this. She's not here to do what anyone else wants her to do. And she's meant to heal from any trauma that she experienced by having that South Node in the eighth house. So whatever it was, the war, the trauma, the loss of the soulmate, she is meant to heal that. The planetary ruler of the North Node is Mars in the ninth house of Gemini. And again, ninth house meant to broaden her views and perspective and just to sit and contemplate life. She is meant to get a lot of space, freedom to explore and become her own. She's meant to get back to being her own spiritual compass, her own trusting the guidance that comes from within and not from anybody else. And in Gemini, again, she's that eternal student, always questioning, always seeking, always learning. And she's an endless child, not meant to age, to feel young, even in old age. Planets in aspect to the North Node, we're dealing with that square to Venus and Hydra, where she's here to get back her inner voice, and that trine to Saturn. We know that she was functioning under limits before, and she felt comfortable with that. And now she's meant to break free from that. She's meant to come forward with her own dreams and visions and her own inner voice. That sums up my reading for AE. Thank you for listening. And if you'd like to find out more information about booking a reading with me or getting your own channel digital art creation, you can check out my website at www.dlkevolve.com. Have a great day.